The cold chill of the operating room was nothing compared to the ice running through my veins. I was lying on the surgical table, the harsh fluorescent lights burning my eyes, counting the tiny holes in the ceiling tiles to keep from panicking. The IV was in my arm, a cold drip of fluids preparing my body for what was supposed to be the ultimate act of love. In the next room, my brother Jason was waiting. He was waiting for my kidney, the organ that was supposed to save his life. He had been on dialysis for 8 agonizing months, his body wasting away, or so I thought. The surgeon was reviewing the consent forms, his voice a low murmur in the sterile air. I was ready. I was terrified, but I was ready to cut myself open for my only sibling. Then, the heavy double doors of operating room 3 burst open with a force that cracked them against the rubber stops. A nurse stumbled back, her mask askew, failing to hold back the intruder. And then I heard it, a voice shrill with panic, cracking with desperation. "Mom, stop, don't do it." If you have ever felt the crushing weight of betrayal by the one person who was supposed to protect you, or if you have ever questioned the price of family loyalty, then lean in close. This is a story about the thin line between love and manipulation, and how sometimes the person you trust the most is the one holding the knife. Before we dive into the depths of this deception, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Sleep Revenge. These stories are not just about payback. They are about the resilience of the human spirit and the truth that refuses to stay buried. Turn off the lights, get comfortable, and prepare yourself for a journey that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family. Let's rewind. Let's go back to a time before the scalpels and the sirens, back to when the biggest problem in my life was trying to figure out how to save my little brother. Jason was the golden boy, or at least, that's the narrative my parents had spun for us since childhood. He was charming, effortlessly funny, the kind of guy who could talk his way out of a speeding ticket or into a free drink. I was the older sister, the responsible one, the one who studied while he partied, the one who saved while he spent. We were a team, or so I believed. When the diagnosis came down like a guillotine blade, it shattered our world. Kidney failure, stage 5. The doctor sat us down in a sterile office that smelled of antiseptic and fear and told us the brutal truth. Jason needed a transplant, or he would be dead within a year. The dialysis was keeping him alive, but it was a slow, painful torture. He was withering away in front of us. His skin was gray, his energy was non-existent, and the vibrant brother I knew was being replaced by a ghost. The doctors said it was likely genetic, a cruel twist of fate written in our DNA. They ran the tests, drawing vial after vial of blood, and the results came back with a miracle. I was a match, a perfect match. The odds were astronomical, and my parents wept with relief, hugging me like I was a saint, a savior. I didn't hesitate. How could I? This was my brother. We shared a childhood, a history, a bloodline. I would have given him a lung if he needed it. I would have given him my heart. I signed the papers without reading the fine print. I underwent the psychological evaluations, the physical stress tests, the endless probing by the transplant committee. I smiled through the fear, telling myself that the scar on my side would be a badge of honor. I was saving a life. I was being a hero. But there was a storm brewing in my own home that I was too blind to see. My daughter, Piper, was 13 at the time. She was at that age where silence is more dangerous than screaming. She was observant, sharp, possessing a mind that dissected the world with a precision that often unnerved me. While I was busy playing the martyr, Piper was watching. She was watching Uncle Jason a little too closely. At first, I dismissed it as teenage angst. She would roll her eyes when Jason came over for dinner, complaining about the smell of his jacket, or the way he excused himself to the bathroom every 20 minutes. She hated the way he treated me, always asking for money, always borrowing the car and returning it with an empty tank, always complaining about his illness, while eating a steak dinner that I had paid for. "Piper, be nice," I would scold her. "He's sick, he's dying." "He's not dying, Mom," she would snap back, her eyes dark with a conviction I couldn't understand. "He's playing you." I grounded her for that. I grounded my own daughter for speaking the truth because I was too enamored with the lie. I remember the night before the final pre-op appointment. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the 3 of us, me, Piper, and Jason. Jason was holding court, telling stories about his brave fight, talking about the nausea, the fatigue, the pain. He looked at me with these big, watery eyes and squeezed my hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you, sis," he whispered. "You're the only one who ever really cared." It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. I felt a swell of pride, a rush of purpose. Piper, however, was staring at him. She wasn't eating. She was just staring, her fork hovering over her untouched pasta. Later that night, I heard her crying in her room. I went in to comfort her, assuming she was scared for her uncle. She looked up at me, her face tear-stained but her jaw set. "Mom, please don't do this," she begged. "There's something wrong, I can feel it." "You're being paranoid, honey," I said, stroking her hair. "You don't understand adult relationships. Family helps family." "I understand that he's a liar," she whispered. "Please just look at his medical records again. Look at the timeline." I left the room that night frustrated, thinking she was just being a difficult teenager. I had no idea that she wasn't crying out of fear. She was crying out of frustration because she couldn't prove it yet. That was when she started her own investigation. While I was prepping for surgery, my 13-year-old daughter was turning into a private investigator. She noticed things that I, in my cloud of self-sacrifice, had missed. She noticed that despite the genetic nature of the disease, our grandparents had lived into their 90s with pristine kidneys. She noticed that Jason's medication wasn't the standard immunosuppressants or diuretics usually prescribed. She saw pill bottles with labels she didn't recognize, bottles he kept hidden in a gym bag he never let out of his sight. She started following him. I know now how dangerous that was, how reckless, but desperation makes warriors of us all. She skipped school 3 weeks before the surgery. She followed his car to a part of town we never went to, a neighborhood of crumbling brick buildings and shady street corners. She watched from a distance as he met with men who didn't look like doctors. She saw the handshakes, the exchanges. She didn't have proof then, just a gut feeling and a burning need to save her mother. The breakthrough happened a week before the surgery. Jason was at dialysis, hooked up to the machine, screaming about how much he hurt. Piper knew his schedule. She knew he would be gone for 4 hours. She took the spare key I kept in the kitchen drawer and went to his apartment. It was a violation of privacy. A crime, really, but she was driven by a terror that I refused to acknowledge. She told me later that the apartment smelled like stale smoke and cheap cologne. She didn't know where to look until she found the laptop tucked under a pile of dirty laundry in his closet. It was password protected, but Jason was arrogant. The password was the name of his high school girlfriend, a detail he bragged about constantly. She was in. What she found on that hard drive was a roadmap to hell. She found bank statements showing deposits of thousands of dollars every week, money that didn't come from his disability checks. She found emails with coded subject lines like product arrival and street price update. She found videos he had taken himself, bragging to his friends about his operation. And she found the medical reports he had hidden, the real ones. The ones that said his kidney failure wasn't genetic. It was acute interstitial nephritis, caused by chronic, high-dose toxicity. He had poisoned himself. He had destroyed his own organs with the very drugs he was selling. She copied everything. Emails, texts, photos, videos. She put it all on a USB drive and hid it in her room. She tried to tell me again. She stood in the doorway of my bedroom while I was packing my bag for the hospital stay. "Mom, I have proof," she said. "He's selling pills. His kidneys failed because of drugs. He's going to ruin yours too." I didn't listen. I couldn't listen. I was too far gone in the narrative of my own heroism. I told her she was grounded again. I told her to stay out of it. I told her that if she brought it up one more time, I wouldn't let her visit me in the hospital. I watched her face fall. I watched the hope die in her eyes. She nodded, turned around, and walked away. I thought I had won. I thought I had put a stop to her hysteria. I didn't know that she was already planning her final move. She knew I wouldn't listen. She knew the only way to stop me was to confront me when I couldn't run, when I couldn't hide behind the excuse of misunderstanding. She waited for the surgery day. Now flash forward back to the operating room. The beep of the heart monitor was the only sound, accelerating as my panic rose. There she was, my daughter, standing in the doorway in her school uniform, breathing hard, a security guard hovering behind her. The surgeon was annoyed, his mask crinkling as he frowned. "You can't be in here," he said sternly. "This is a sterile environment. Remove her." "Wait," I gasped, my voice sounding weak and thin. "Give us a minute." The surgeon looked at me, then at the clock on the wall. We're on a tight schedule, Ms. Davis. Every minute counts. 1 minute, I pleaded. Please. He sighed, nodding to the anesthesiologist to hold off. Make it quick. The guard stepped back, closing the door slightly to give us a sliver of privacy. Piper walked to the side of the table. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. She pulled her phone from her pocket. I tried to tell you, Mom, she whispered, her eyes welling with tears. You have to see this. You have to see it now. I'm about to go into surgery, Piper, I said, trying to be gentle, trying to be the parent even though I was the one strapped to a gurney. Please, honey, we can talk about this later. If you go under, it's too late, she said, her voice cracking. Please, just look. She held the screen up to my face. She hit play. The video was dark, grainy, clearly filmed through a crack in a door or a window, but the audio was clear. It was Jason's apartment. There he was, my baby brother, sitting at his kitchen table. He wasn't dying. He didn't look weak. He looked energized, focused. He was counting pills, hundreds of tiny white tablets, sorting them into clear plastic baggies with a practiced, rapid motion. A man I didn't recognize was tossing wads of cash onto the table. Quality looks good, the man said. Best in the city, Jason replied, his voice loud and confident. Pure profit, no overhead. My blood ran cold. I felt a physical sensation in my stomach like I had been punched. What is this? I breathed. Keep watching, Piper said. She swiped to the next clip. This one was a video file clearly taken from the laptop. It was Jason in his car, the camera propped up on the dashboard. He was talking to the passenger seat, though no one was there. He was recording a message, a log for himself or maybe for a partner. Once I get the kidney, I'm good for another 10 years, easy, Jason said to the camera, a smug grin plastered on his face. He tapped his chest. My sister's an idiot. She actually thinks this is genetic. She actually thinks she's saving a life. It's beautiful. I just need to lay low for a few months after the surgery, play the grateful brother, let her bring me soup. Then, once the incision heals and the docs clear me, I'm back in business. The unseen listener, or perhaps just his own ego, seemed to prompt him. You're really going to let her give you a kidney and then go right back to using? He echoed, answering the unheard question. Why not? She's never going to know. And even if she figures it out, what's she going to do? Ask for it back. It's a donation, bro, no take-backs. And she's such a pushover, she'd probably apologize for accusing me. The video ended. The screen went black. The silence in the operating room was absolute. The surgeon and the anesthesiologist had stopped moving. They were staring at the phone, then at me. The monitor recording my heart rate was beeping wildly now, a staccato rhythm that matched the pounding in my chest. He said it was genetic, I stammered, the words tasting like ash. The doctors said. I looked it up, Mom, Piper said softly. Chronic drug use, painkillers, the kind he's selling, it destroys the kidneys. He did this to himself, and he's going to do it to yours. The room started to spin. I looked at the IV line, the clear liquid that was supposed to put me to sleep. If I had let them administer it, I would have woken up with one kidney, physically weaker, and morally bankrupted by my own brother's deceit. I would have given a piece of my body to fuel his drug empire. I would have been an accomplice to my own mutilation. Do you want us to remove her? The surgeon asked again, but his tone had changed. It wasn't annoyance now, it was shock. I looked at Piper. I saw the fear in her eyes. The desperate need for validation. I saw the 13-year-old girl who had been forced to become an adult because her mother was too blind to see the monster in the room. I thought about every time I had scolded her, grounded her, dismissed her. The guilt was a tidal wave, threatening to drown me. But underneath the guilt, something else was rising. A cold, hard rage. It was a fury I had never felt before, a protective instinct not for Jason, but for myself and my daughter. No, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a stranger, someone harder than I had ever been. I need to stop this. The surgeon stepped closer. Ms. Davis, are you withdrawing consent? Yes, I said. Yes, I am withdrawing consent, right now. The surgeon nodded briskly, the professionalism snapping back into place. He pressed the button on his radio. Cancel the procedure. Recipient and donor are both being removed from the OR stat. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses rushed in, unhooking monitors, pulling the IV from my arm with gentle but hurried hands. I sat up, the paper gown crinkling. I was shaking, a fine tremor that rattled my teeth, but I stood up. I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. "Where's Jason?" I asked. My voice sounded metallic. "He's in the adjacent suite, prepped and waiting," a nurse said gently. "Ma'am, you should sit down. You've had a shock." "I want to see him," I said. "I don't think that's a good idea," the surgeon interjected. "You're in a fragile emotional state. Let the nurses take you to recovery. We can contact the administration." "I don't care if it's a good idea," I said, cutting him off. I looked at Piper. "Come with me." We walked out of the operating room, a bizarre procession, me in a flimsy hospital gown, barefoot on the cold linoleum, and my daughter in her school uniform. We walked down the hallway. The air felt heavy, thick with the scent of antiseptic and impending doom. We reached the doors to the other prep room. I didn't knock. I pushed them open. Jason was on the table, looking bored. He was scrolling through his phone, already dressed in his surgical cap and gown. He looked up when the doors swung open. A slow, easy smile spread across his face. It was the smile he used to charm our parents, the smile he used to manipulate me. "Hey," he said, sitting up slightly. "They said there was a delay. Everything okay? You look pale, sis. Getting cold feet." I walked straight up to the side of his bed. Piper stood behind me, holding the phone like a weapon. "No, Jason," I said. "Everything is not okay." His smile faltered, flickering like a dying light bulb. He sensed the shift in the air. "What's wrong? Did something happen with the anesthesia?" I held up Piper's phone. I didn't say a word, I just hit play. I held it right in front of his face. I watched his eyes as the video played. I watched the color drain from his cheeks, leaving him as gray as the walls. I watched the recognition dawn, the realization that the game was up. The audio filled the small room. My sister's an idiot. She actually thinks this is genetic. I pulled the phone back. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. "Where did you get that?" Jason hissed. His voice was no longer the weak, dying brother. It was a snake's hiss. "It doesn't matter where I got it," I said. My voice was low, trembling not with fear, but with suppressed rage. "What matters is that I know. I know about the pills, Jason. I know about the dealing. I know about the drug use that destroyed your kidneys. I know it wasn't genetic. I know you did this to yourself." "That's not," he started, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an exit, a lie, a savior. "Don't," I said, my voice cracking like a whip. "Don't lie to me one more time. I have everything. Bank records, emails, videos. Piper found it all." His head snapped to Piper. The mask of the loving brother fell away completely. His face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "You little—" He lunged forward, his hand reaching out as if to grab her. I stepped between them, blocking his path. "Don't," I warned. "Don't even look at her. She just saved my life. She saved me from you." Jason's jaw clenched. He fell back against the pillows, his hands gripping the sheets. "You don't understand," he spat, his voice desperate now. "I needed this. I was going to get clean. I was going to stop after the surgery." "You just said on video you'd be back in business in a few months," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "You said I was an idiot. You said there were no takebacks." "I was joking. It was talk, just business talk," he yelled, his voice rising in panic. "You can't do this. I'll die." "Then die," I said. The words hung in the air. They were ugly, harsh, and final, but I meant them. I meant every single syllable. "But you're not taking me down with you," I continued, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You're not taking a piece of me and destroying it the way you destroyed yourself. You're not getting my kidney. You're not getting anyone's kidney until you get real help. And you're not getting my sympathy." I turned around. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't want to hear his pleas, his threats, or his manipulations. I grabbed Piper's hand, her fingers cold in mine, and we walked out. Behind us, the screaming started. "You can't leave me. You're my sister. You have to help me. Mom and Dad will never forgive you. You're killing me." I kept walking. The nurses rushed past us into the room to restrain him. The security guard looked at me with wide eyes. I didn't care. I felt light, like I had left 100 pounds of weight in that room. We went to the locker room. I changed back into my street clothes, my hands trembling as I buttoned my shirt. I signed the paperwork the administrator brought in, my signature jagged and fierce. Withdrawal of consent, the paper read. It was the most beautiful document I had ever signed. But I wasn't done. This wasn't just about saving my kidney. This was about justice. This was about the months of lies, the years of manipulation, the emotional blackmail. I sat in the hospital waiting room with Piper. I took the USB drive she had hidden in her pocket. I called the police. I didn't just report a crime. I reported organ trafficking fraud, drug distribution, and endangerment. I sent the files to the hospital board. I sent them to the transplant committee. I sent them to the dialysis center. I watched the chaos unfold from the safety of the waiting room. I saw administration officials rushing down the halls. I saw the police arrive, their lights flashing red and blue against the hospital windows. Jason was discharged from the transplant program immediately. He was wheeled out of the prep room not for surgery, but for processing. He was arrested 2 days later. The trial was a spectacle. He tried to play the victim card again. He tried to say I was a bitter sister. That Piper had fabricated the evidence, but the bank records didn't lie. The forensic analysis of his laptop didn't lie. The drug tests they ran on him in jail didn't lie. He pleaded guilty to distribution of controlled substances, possession with intent to sell, and fraud. He got 6 years. He served 4. It's been years since that day in the operating room. The dust has settled, but the scars remain. Not physical ones, but the deep, invisible lines that map the landscape of betrayal. My parents, they didn't take it well. That was the price I had to pay for my freedom. They saw me as the villain. They saw Jason as the tragic hero struck down by illness and then betrayed by his own flesh and blood. They told me I abandoned him. They told me I let him suffer. They said family helps family, no matter what. I tried to explain. I showed them the videos. I showed them the bank statements. But denial is a powerful drug, more potent than anything Jason was selling. They refused to believe it. They chose the lie because the lie was comfortable. The lie meant they didn't have to admit they had raised a monster. They cut me off. I lost my parents that day, too. But I gained something infinitely more valuable. I gained my self-respect. I gained the unshakable bond of truth with my daughter. Piper is 16 now. She's applying to colleges. She wants to study criminal justice. She wants to catch people who lie, who hurt their families, who exploit trust. She wants to be the voice for those who aren't believed. And I know she will be amazing at it. She already is. Jason got out of prison 6 months ago. He's in a halfway house, supposedly clean. He sent a letter. It was filled with apologies, with talk of finding God and pleas for forgiveness. He asked if we could rebuild our relationship. I looked at the letter, then at my daughter, then at myself in the mirror. I didn't respond. Piper asked me if I thought he was really sorry. I think he's sorry he got caught, I told her. I think he's sorry he lost his supply line. I don't think he's sorry for what he tried to do to me. Because if he were sorry, he would have told me the truth before he put me on that table. Some people call me heartless. They say I should have given him the kidney anyway, that I should have given him a second chance. But they don't know the reality of laying on a table, ready to sacrifice a piece of your body for a lie. They don't know what it feels like to realize the person you love most in the world views you as nothing more than a resource to be harvested and discarded. That kind of betrayal changes you. It hardens you, but it also clarifies things. Family isn't just blood. Family is truth. Family is respect. And when someone violates that, when they weaponize your love against you, they lose the right to be called family. I don't regret my choice. I sleep soundly at night with both my kidneys and my integrity intact. That is the story of how I walked away from the ultimate betrayal. It's a story that asks a difficult question. How far would you go for family, and where do you draw the line? I want to know what you think. Did I do the right thing? Or should I have swallowed the lie and saved my brother? Scroll down and let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If this story gave you chills, if it made you think, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Sleep Revenge is just getting started, and there are many more stories of justice to come. Thank you for listening, and remember, The truth has a way of finding the light, even in the darkest operating rooms. I'll see you in the next one.